Okay, this video is about how to add color, texture, lighting, shadow, video, etc. in Maya. I'm going to show you a number of things at once. So let's first of all talk about color. So if I make a shape in Maya and I want to change its color, I'm going to right click on it, say assign new material, decide how shiny I want this material. I would either use Blinn for shininess, Lambert for matte, or one of these two Fongs for shiny. The rest of them you shouldn't have to worry about at the moment. I'm just going to take Lambert, which is going to be matte, so not shiny at all. And when you put a Lambert on, your attribute editor should show you a color window, in which case you can simply pick a color. And so that's it. It's that easy. Turn off this channel box here. Okay, so if you want to add a picture onto an object, if you want to map a picture onto it, again, I will make an object, and very similar, I'll right click on it and again say assign new material, and I'll pick that Lambert again. But this time, instead of picking a color, I'm going to pick the flag, which is right down here, and then I'm going to pick file. So in other words, the color is going to be a file that I decide. And when you click that, you'll then get a window here where you can browse for that file. And so I'm going to grab this one called Grassy that I just downloaded. So now I've got this sort of grassy picture. Now you won't actually see this picture perhaps if you're in the fully shaded mode. And usually when you open up Maya, that's what you're in. You're in this shaded mode. So you have to hit the number 6 on your keyboard to see so the picture shows up. So it's a number 6. It's not on your keypad. It's the number 6 that's above your letters. And that should make it so the picture shows up. Now the picture also may not be fully in the object. And so you have to map it onto the object so it's fully there. And the easiest way to do that is to look directly at your object. You can either do it in this view, or you can shift to this view right here. I'm going to hit my 6 key again. This is the top-down view. So if you really want to map it perfectly, this would be it. Click on it, and then make sure you're in your modeling menu set right here. And then on your UVs, say camera base. So it's a camera based UV, and you have to go back to object mode because it takes you out of object mode. You will then get your entire picture. In other words, it's like a slide projector projecting onto the object, and so it maps right on there. And then it tries to map the other sides as best it can. It doesn't necessarily do a great job. And you could also use a plane if you wanted, something like that. So that's how you get a picture on there. Perhaps you want this picture to be in the background, like a big background image. I mean, certainly you could, put it there and then really make it super big. Problem is when you render this, it's going to collect light and shadow like it's a big picture and not like it's the background. So that's not generally the best way to do it. A better way to do it is to actually use the background shading. So under view, this is in your window right here, under view, you can go to image plane and hit import image, and it will make it in the background everywhere. And then it doesn't matter, like I can make, more stuff here. I can move around, and it just stays. It just sits in that background all the time. Okay. Now when you render it, these are the render quick buttons up here. To do a quick render, you'll be hitting this box right here. It's the second box, and that will give you a quick render of what we're seeing here. If you want to play with the render settings, because you may have to, it's the box, it's a little clacker that has a gear on it. You click that one, and then you can play with the settings and change things as needed, and I'll go into that in just a moment. All right. So I'm going to make a new scene now. So let's try putting a movie as instead of just having a still picture, we're going to map a movie onto this. So for that, you'll need to go into Premiere with your movie. So here I've got a movie of an eye blinking right here. It's a very short movie. It's just eye blinking in Premiere. And the reason why I'm in Premiere with it, because I have to export it as a sequence of JPEG images. So I can't actually have a movie. It won't play in Maya. It'll actually play in the render, but it won't play while you're working with it. And you may want it to play while you're working with it. You have to make it a series of still images. So that's just how you export from Premiere. So once you have your movie in Premiere, you can simply say File, Export Media, and pick in the format JPEG instead of like, H.264 or whatever. You pick JPEG. And it already knows that you want a JPEG sequence. It knows if you're saying a still image, you're going to want a sequence. And that's about it, right? So I'm just going to, first of all, decide where that's going to go. Let's see, I'm going to put it in a folder where I know where it's going to be. I'll save it in there. I'll just hit match source for everything here. I don't think I have to do any settings. Yeah, all that looks fine. Export as sequence, it's already checked. I'm going to export it, and it's making the sequence. And now I'm going to go back to Maya. And we'll do the same thing like we were doing this still image mapping onto this. So I'm going to say assign new material again. I'm going to pick a Lambert as my, how shiny, my shininess and my material setting. And then for color, again, I'm going to hit that flag, hit file again, just like I'm doing a still image. But you'll notice here, not only does it give you this browser window to look for the still image, there is a box right here where it says use image sequence. So as long as I check that box, I'm just going to click on the very first image of the eye blink right here, which is eye blink 1. Hit open. And I'll hit my number 6 key again so I can see it. And you'll see it's not mapped very well. I'll map that in just a moment. And I'm going to make sure I check image sequence. And then it knows to look for the numbers in the sequence. See, it's doing my eye blink. And it'll do up to number 63. That's how many images I have. And then it's just going to go blank. So it'll be for as long as you have images. And then it'll just go blank. And then again, I'm going to map that on there better by looking straight at it. I'll click it, and then I'll say UV camera based. And that will map the whole eye on there. And now you should see the blink happen as I scrub here on the timeline. That's what it'll do. So that's how you can put a moving image as an image sequence in Maya. Like I said, you could do it as a movie without doing those separate images, but it won't scrub like this. You'll only see the first image and that's it. So you won't be able to time anything up if you need to time it to the movie. Okay, what about casting shadows and lighting and all of that? So I'm going to make a surface that is going to catch a shadow. Let's say I want to cast a shadow. And I'm going to import something from Illustrator. I'm going to import, where is the import? Where do I want to import something? Maybe this little shape right here. And I'm going to select it, and I'm going to do planar on it, which is surfaces planar. And what that does will give it something that can block the light. Right here, and you'll notice and see it's still it even keeps the Illustrator stuff, the vector stuff, but there's my light blocker. And I don't really like my pivot point being over here in the middle of the grid, so I can hit center pivot, modify center pivot, and that will put it where I want it. honestly, I think it should be defaulting right there, but it's not. It just defaults to the center of the grid. That's just the way they set up Maya. Okay, so there is my object. Maybe I'll make it bigger. Yeah, that's good. And I'll give it an angle so that we can see it casting a shadow on here. All right. And so if I'm going to cast a shadow, I'm going to need light. So I'm going to have to create a light. So under create, you have some lights here. You have ambient, directional, point, spot, area, and volume. Ambient will kind of light up everything evenly, and it just kind of makes it everything brighter. Doesn't really create a lighting effect. It just makes it so you can see everything. Directional is like a sunlight. It only responds to rotation only, so it's like a big sunlight. A point light is like a light bulb. It's literally like a naked light bulb in space, and it just shines all around itself at whatever distance you tell it. And all these things, if you want to set things, you can either use the settings box, or as soon as you make the light, it's going to show up in your attribute editor, and you can change the attributes. I'm going to use a spotlight to make the shadow effect. So I'm just going to create a spotlight. It's going to put it in the middle of the grid. There it is. And the spotlight is a sort of a cone where it shines out the bottom of the cone. It's sort of like a flashlight. You know, like you see this little tip here is like the flashlight, and it's just shining out. So right now it's facing the wrong direction. So I'm going to have to shine it on my object right here. And I won't see any lighting until I hit the number 7 key. So 6 is full color, and then 7 is fully lit. So there it is showing lighting. And again, this is the number 7 key that's above your letters. It's not the 7 key on your keypad. So there it is, and it's lighting, and this is sort of an approximation. This isn't the real thing, because you have to do a render for the real thing. But it's probably pretty close. I can do a quick render, and it's probably going to be pretty similar. But what I want is I want this shape to mask out and create a shadow effect. So then I have to turn on the shadows. The lights don't have shadows turned on by default because it's easier for the render. It's faster if you don't have shadows on. And by the way, you can choose the light color if you wish in your attribute editor. I could make it like a yellow light. The intensity, if I want to make it brighter or not. I could also change, in this case, it has a cone. I could change that cone angle and make it wider or smaller. Anyway, in this case, I want some shadows. So shadows is going to be one of these tabs over here. It's going to say shadows. You're going to twirl that down, and then it gives you a couple of options. You can either use these depth map shadows by clicking it, or you can do the ray trace shadows by clicking that one. You get one or the other. Depth map gives you kind of lower quality shadows, but it's faster to render. So if I do a quick render with those depth map shadows turned on, you will then see it's making kind of crunchy edged shadows of my object right here. And if instead I turn on the ray trace instead, it should make better shadows, but I have to make sure in my settings, this is Maya Software. I'm going to click on Maya Software. I got to make sure the ray tracing is turned on because that's off by default. It shouldn't be, but it is. Here's the ray tracing quality. I got to, again, this is in the Maya Software tab. Ray trace quality, I'm going to twirl that down and turn on ray tracing. Great, now it works. So that's the only thing about ray tracing. And see, the shadows are a bit better. It's not quite as crunchy. And you can get better and better by turning up some of these faders right here. So some of the higher numbers. And now what will happen is it'll also take longer. So the more shadow you want, or the better the shadow you want, it's going to take longer. Also, in your render settings right here, I guess that's where we just were. Let's just go to the common area. I don't know why I got that blue line right there. I'm going to go to the common area, and I can choose how big my picture is. If you go to the bottom, here it says width 960 by height 540. These are pixels. So as soon as I hit render, that's the size that I get, and it's not very high resolution. It's certainly good for arranging things to make sure you got what you like. But if you want to go bigger, you can. You either use one of these presets right here, or just put any number you want in one of these boxes. For instance, if I want to have 2000 width, it will automatically, well, it doesn't automatically do anything. It's setting my height to 540. So that would be kind of a narrow, not very high picture right here. Maybe I'll just do one of these presets. I'll just go to like full 1080 or something like that. HD 1080. HD 1080 is 1080 by 1920. I mean, that works. So now when I do the render, it will get a much larger image. So my final image could be really high resolution because it'll have lots and lots of pixels. So that's the idea. And when you do one of these quick renders right here, you can always save your image too. I can hit File, Save Image, and decide where it's going to be and what kind. JPEG is great, and then give it a name, and then tell it where I want it to go, and then I will have my image. Okay. Let's see, I think that's everything I wanted to go over. Yeah, lighting, shadow, video, render, background, pictures, and color. Great, that's it. That's all for this tutorial, and that is it.